Hello creeps! Andy here. I'm so excited because today I'm going to be ranking every book that I've read from Ronald Malfi. He has quickly become one of my favorite horror writers ever. I just started reading his books maybe a year or two ago, and I've only read about 6 of them-ish, but he's got tons and tons of books. So if there's none that I listed here, please leave your favorite Ronald Malfis down below so I know which ones to check out in the future. But today I'm just going to be talking about and ranking his books, and ranking as in my least favorite to my most favorite, but just know that I always enjoy his works, but I'll tell you why they're in the order that they are. I really like Ronald Malfi for 2 reasons. One, a lot of his books are very heartfelt, emotional, like you can feel his emotions coming through the pages, and I really love that when reading. And 2, I really like him because he does this thing where it feels like you're kind of walking this line between reality and supernatural, and a lot of his books kind of leave it open for interpretation to what's actually happening. And even in the books that lean a little bit more one way or the other, I still feel like there's enough evidence in the text to be able to have the reader question what's actually happening. So I really like that. I'm not huge on supernatural books. I mean, they have to be done really well to keep me entertained. They're definitely not my favorite subgenre of horror, but he just does such a great job with it that it keeps me intrigued the whole time. So let's get to ranking here. The first one is Ghostwritten by Ronald Malfi. So I think the reason why this is on the bottom is because it's just four novellas? Yeah, 4 novellas put together, and they kind of come and wrap back around, but not really. And it's not that I didn't enjoy some of the stories, but I read this one after I read my 2 favorite books from him, and those 2 are very heartfelt, emotional, you feel his pain, and this one's just more like fun, whatever kind of stories. And so it really threw me off. I was like, wait, how are these the same writers? Also in this one, at the end, I think he says something about how there's a lot of little hidden Easter eggs throughout these novellas. So if you've read a lot of his books, then you can kind of pick up on these little things throughout the story. And because I had only read 2 of his books before that, I feel like I missed out on those. And I think he says in here, I could be wrong, but I think he says that sometimes he just needs a break from writing the really intense books, so he wanted to write something a little bit lighter. Totally respect that. There's nothing wrong with it. I was just expecting something like those other 2 books, and then because this was so different, it was kind of jarring to me. But that's not to say that it was horrible or anything. Like, I still really do enjoy his writing, but I would say out of all these books, this one is like the standalone, not like any of the rest that he's written. Oh, and the novellas, I mean, they're just different stories. There's one story I remember about these mannequins in a front yard and these people that are going missing. And then there's one about brothers that are running away from, maybe it's just one of the brothers runs away from a crime they commit. I read this one a long time ago, so I don't remember all of the novellas. Now the next one is Bone White by Ronald Malfi. I just recently read this one. I read it actually on Kindle, and I want to say it was free on Kindle. Do you see that dog hair? I want to say it was free on Kindle, but now I'm questioning myself. But look and see if it's free. It might be free, but if not, it was like $1 or something. I don't know. Check it out. But the reason I purchased a copy was because, well, let me tell you what it's about first. It's about this man named Paul. His brother went missing after going to this small town in Alaska, his twin brother. And Paul has always wondered what happened to his brother, because he just disappeared one day. He sent him pictures from the town, he told him where he was, and then never to be heard of again. So when Paul sees this news report from this town of these mass graves that have been excavated, he is certain that one of them is his brother. So he ends up flying to the town in Alaska, going there himself, and finding that the town is just weird. The people in the town are very superstitious about the mountains surrounding the town, and they like don't come out at night, and they're very weird about the woods and all the lore that the town was built on. So he goes to try to figure out if his brother was one of the victims. And the way that these graves were found was that one man went to the police in the town and said, I've killed a bunch of people. And so, yeah, you go on this journey with Paul. You try to figure out what the heck's going on in the town, where his brother is, if his brother's one of the victims of this man, why this man killed a bunch of people. It's creepy, it's spooky, it's fun. There's a lot of like creepy, woodsy, I would say it a little bit reminded me in that regard of like a Pet Cemetery. So not the like coming back from the dead or anything, but more just like the lore of the creepy woods and stuff. And there's some sincerely creepy scenes in here. I honestly think that the reason why this one isn't higher on the list is because it isn't really, I mean, it is about like how much you love someone and how far you would go for them kind of thing, but it felt less emotional to me than some of the other books that he's written. And then the other thing that I would say is because of the twin thing, there's some weird supernatural stuff that has to do with the woods and like what's actually going on in the town and stuff, but then there's also some weird stuff about twin telepathy, and I just am not a fan of that kind of stuff. I think because my mom was a twin sister, and so yeah, I grew up with twins, and so I've never really loved stories like that. So that's probably why it's lower on the list, but I still really enjoy the read. Like, I still recommend reading all of these books. The reason I purchased this one is because my husband has just ditched me for 7 days to go and stay in a remote cabin in Alaska. And I said, please just bring this book and read it while you're there, because I could not imagine how creepy and fun of a read this would be reading it in Alaska. So I purchased it for him, put it in his bag, and then I saw him packing and the book was nowhere in sight. And so for the past week, I've been trying to convince him to take it. He's like, no. And then I said, well, if you get bored, don't complain because you don't have a book. And this man looked me dead in the eyes and said, if I get bored, I would rather play with rocks than touch a book. So now we're getting divorced. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so he didn't want the book, which is fine anyways, because he's already freaking, you know? But anyways, let's move on to the next one. The Night Parade. Oh, I love this book so much. Now, this one and the next one, it was really hard to tell which one I liked more. But this one was so fun to read. It's a great book. I mean, these are all great books, but this is about something, they call it the Wanderer's Folly, and it's basically this outbreak that takes place in the US. It's an epidemic, and it ends up infecting people and making them kind of lose their minds. And so you get little bits and pieces of seeing these people lose their shit, and then you see it escalate into full-blown paranoia and entire towns being killed off and the military blocking certain things. It's a really cool pandemic type story to read. Really awesome. So it's about this man and this daughter, and you pick up kind of in the middle of the action in medias res, and they are driving away from their hometown, but you don't know exactly where they're going, why they're heading out, where like the rest of their family and friends are. And it's cool because it starts from this perspective, but then it goes back little by little, and you see the entire pandemic play out from the very first occurrence of what happened up until we wrap back around and we're trying to figure out like what's going on with this daughter and dad. You don't know if they've done something wrong, you don't know if they're on the run, you don't know, like you have no idea what's going on. This one was definitely emotional in the aspect of having children. I don't have children, so it's not like I related to the story much in that sense, but it was still such a beautiful story of just a father and a daughter's relationship and kind of how far you would go for your kids. Really beautiful sentiments behind it. It's just a cool book. I was intrigued how similar, but then how different it was from our own pandemic that happened. And yeah, it was just really interesting reading this in the lens after everything went down. The next one is Ronald Malfi's newest book. This one just came out. Go buy it. It's really good. So another thing I'll say is the reason I love Ronald Malfi is I feel like he writes books that I just love. Like I feel like they are written for me. They're really, really creepy scenes. They're awesome characters, really interesting characters in a lot of the cases, really heartfelt, really emotional. They kind of hurt you to read a little bit. So this guy, I would highly recommend for anybody who just wants to be creeped out. I'm probably going to do a horror thriller summer recommendation list, and this will definitely be on it. So this is Small Town Horror. This one just came out this month, and I could not put it down. It was so awesome. I didn't give you too much of an explanation in the last video, so I'm going to give you a little bit more in this one without ruining anything. So you have our main character, who now I can't even remember his name, Andrew. He and his wife have just found out that they're pregnant, and ever since his wife's pregnancy, he's been feeling very on edge, very uneasy. He almost feels like some presence is following him or watching him. He just feels weird. He gets a phone call from a man that he knew 20 years ago. Growing up, they were friends, from the town that he grew up in, asking him to come back because he needs help. So our main character goes back to the town that he swore he would never return to. He stays in his father's old home, and he meets up with his old friends. Now I know what you're thinking, because this is what I was thinking, or maybe this is what you're thinking if we have the same thought process. I was thinking, okay, so it's going to be like an It, you know, the friends return and maybe they fight some evil from childhood. But it's not really like that. It's actually quite different. And the reason why I enjoy his books is because I always think I know what's going to happen, and then I don't. I have no idea. I really liked this one because the friendships are very stilted and uncomfortable and almost antagonistic, and I feel like a better representation of somebody who had been gone for 20 years and then reuniting. It's not just all going to be laughs and giggles and this and that. I mean, maybe for a situation like It, where all of them just return, but in this specific case, the friends have all known each other for 20 years, and then Andrew comes back into the mix, and because he returns, it kind of stirs up more chaos. So there's a lot of just like discomfort and animosity in the group that I really, really enjoyed. So I said before that you didn't really love any of the characters, and I think that's why, and I think I failed to really explain that in the last video, but you don't really get close enough to them because you're just getting little glimpses here and there of what happened in their past, in their childhood, what led them to becoming friends, what led them to stop being friends, and why Andrew left the town and promised to never return. So this one's cool because it's very hot, very summery. It takes place during the 4th of July week. So a lot of fireworks and fun stuff like that, which I did really enjoy in here. Anyways, so he goes back to this town, and they have a friend whose wife has gone missing, and he's the one that called Andrew because Andrew is a lawyer and he's concerned because it doesn't really look great what's going on. So you have Andrew kind of worried about this guy and what's going to happen to him. Then you also have their past and kind of the weirdness between them, the weirdness of the town, and how he just doesn't want to be there anymore. And all of the friends all kind of feel that same feeling that Andrew feels, like they're being watched, they're being followed, like something is there with them. You have a friend who's an addict, who's definitely unreliable to the other characters in the story, but then also to us too. We don't necessarily get his perspective all that much, but you don't really know what's going on as far as the supernatural aspect goes. And that again is common through a lot of his books. You really don't know one way or the other what's going on. Although this one I feel like it gives you a bit more of a definitive answer, but still also I still feel like there can definitely be an argument for and against it. So it's just a blast. The ending is fantastic. It's so awesome. You just have so many cool repeating themes in here of birth, of birds, the lighthouse. There's just some cool shit going on. Okay, so I freaking love this book. I highly recommend it. And yeah, it is here on my list. Next up, I have 2 more books. Next up is Come With Me. This is the second Ronald Malfi book that I read, and my God, I loved every page of this book. This is one that you could tell that the writer was hurting when he wrote, you know? And for me, the reason why I really enjoy books about grief is it's so validating to feel or to see how you feel about grief be put into words by somebody else, and you're like, yes, that is exactly what it's like. And so this revolves around a man named Aaron, and he just recently lost his wife. She was killed in a tragic, I want to say accident, but I don't know if accident's the right word, but anyways, she unexpectedly passes away. And so he's left with the grief of his wife. So after his wife passes away, he finds that she's been hiding some things from him. It says here that he finds a receipt for a motel. So he goes to this motel. He also finds some papers and stuff that she was hiding from him. And so he goes on this journey to try to figure out why his wife was hiding this and what she was doing. And along the way, he feels haunted, not by her presence, but like haunted by the memory of her. And it's just such a beautiful, heartfelt, emotionally destroy you book about grief. There's one specific quote in here I want to read you. I've read it a lot of times on my channel, but it is just so beautiful. And I think it's cool when you can read a book that not only puts into words how you feel about grief, but also kind of gives you a good lesson about grief as well. So obviously I haven't lost like a wife or significant other or anything like that, but I feel like any grief is kind of like universal in the way that we deal with it. Anyways, this quote is just fantastic. Okay, so he's talking to this elderly woman at this point, and she says, "It's good for them to haunt you in the beginning. It's how we grieve. It's how we get through it without them." And then she says, "But after a time, we must let them go. They need to rest and we need to move on. We haunt ourselves. In the end, if we don't come to peace with it, if we can't resolve it, we haunt ourselves." Oh, I've never connected with words as much as this. I mean, it's so true, because you can just wake up one day and realize that, oh my gosh, I've been grieving for the past 10 years and I've been existing, but I haven't even really been living, because I've just been, yeah, haunting myself with all these memories and this guilt, and oh, it's just great. It's wonderful. So the next book, I wish I had it with me, but I lent it to somebody and they just set everything on fire. Not literally, but anyways, I will be getting the book back soon, but I don't have it with me. I wish I did, because I know that there's some really great quotes in there, but that one is Blackmouth. This is my favorite Ronald Malfi book. This book changed my life. Is that too dramatic? I don't care. This book was fantastic. First of all, some really freaking cool, interesting characters in there that you will never see in another book. I promise you that. It also has that same kind of level of grief and guilt, but our main character, he's grieving the loss of his mother, but they had a pretty rocky relationship, and so it's a different kind of grief than we deal with in here. You have this man, he is trying to become sober from his alcohol addiction, but it's not really working out too well. His mother passes away and he must return to the town that he grew up in, and now he has to take care of his disabled brother. It's kind of on his shoulders now because his mother did it for so long. He ends up meeting back up with friends that he had when he was younger. They start to kind of pick apart and analyze this man that they came in contact with when they were kids, and start to realize how weird and creepy things were, which maybe they didn't realize at the time because they were young, but now as adults in retrospect, they're kind of seeing the red flags and like where things went wrong. This is another cool one where you don't really know if it's supernatural or if you just have somewhat of an unreliable narrator. Not that he's trying to be unreliable, but he is trying to go cold turkey from his alcohol addiction, which causes a whole heap of issues. So you don't know quite where you stand on this, and you don't know quite where you stand with the guy that comes in from their childhood. And it's also interesting too, because I think it does lean more one way than the other, but I definitely think that there's an argument to be made because they are kids, and kids have a way overactive imagination. So like, did it happen the way that they thought they did? Or you know what I mean? Like, it's a very interesting book to analyze. This one again has a lot of themes to kind of come back around and loop back around. This Blackmouth, that is the town, what they call the town. This comes up a lot. It circles back around with like the mines. There's just a lot of symbolism and weird, cool things that I think that he does with this book that really, really intrigued me. But this truly is my favorite Ronald Malfi book. It was fantastic. And you do get the emotion of grieving. You also get the added element of addiction. And then you also do have this like childhood trauma, coming to terms with your past, revisiting what happened to you additional layer to it too. So that it's just multifaceted. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend. Anyways, those are just the Ronald Malfi books that I have read. I know there's a million more. Please feel free to leave me a comment down below and let me know what your favorite Ronald Malfis are, which books I'm missing out on, which ones I should pick up. And yeah, let me know how you feel about these books. Thank you so much for just letting me sit and talk about how much I love books. I mean, I am just so thankful that anybody watches me ramble about books. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I will see you soon with another horror video, and in the meantime, I will see you on Goodreads or Instagram. Okay, thank you for watching. Bye.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.